So the title is Multilingual Acquisition as part of a complete multi-talent development package in young children. So multi-talent part is only an extension of what I'll be talking about. Mainly is the multilingual acquisition today. So here we go. Is this moving? So you don't need a welcome from me. Let me get my little kid to do it for you.
朗朗今天是特别的日子，跟大家说欢迎欢迎，
欢迎参加 Polyglot Conference。
耶！好，那我们第二个用 español。
Bienvenidos a la conferencia de políglotas.
Wow! Et en français?
Bienvenue à la conférence des polyglottes.
Wow! じゃあ次は日本語では
？Polyglotto Canfa yokoso.
Wow! That's very good. So let's finish in English.
Welcome to Polyglot Conference.
Wow, that's very good. Patch, patch, patch. Paisa, paisa. Oh, muy bien.
Okay, so for all the critics out there, I have a confession. This was staged. I taught him how to say polyglotas, which he didn't really know. He is, after all, only 5, so I hope you can give him a chance. But I will show you some of the pieces later in a more natural situations. So this is just the beginning. So let's talk about the outline of my talk. I'm going to actually just remain here behind the stage. I've been told that if I go out there, I kind of dance around and it's distracting. So I want you to focus on the talk on the screen. So a little bit about my family and especially about the linguistics background, how I was raised and how my children are being raised right now. I will, throughout my talk, extend the concept a little bit to other types of skills and talent development. And I want to stress, in the second point, the importance of starting early. And then I'll get into some details about the strategies of how we do it in our home. And there will be many videos and many items that come up. But if anything, I hope you can just go back home with 2 keywords that I'd like to stress. And one is environment, and the second is habit. So I'm not very interventional on the kids themselves. I don't do a lot of drills. I don't get them to do tutoring or courses. I spend a lot of time and effort on designing the environment where they can acquire languages and other skills in a more natural way, and to develop habits in everyday life. I think habit is a very important word. So this is how it is currently. My family, the immediate family, I am, so right here, I am half Taiwanese, half Japanese. My mother's side is Japanese, my father is Taiwanese, and I actually grew up in Taiwan. My wife is fully Japanese. She's from Nagasaki. So my parents, my father is Taiwanese, mother is Japanese. Her parents are both Japanese, and they live still in Japan, and the rest of us live under one roof in Canada, in Quebec specifically. So my sample of 3. First son, Ronnie, he just turned 5 a few months ago. He will be, the protagonista tonight, today. Most of my data is taken from him, but I assure you that it is reproducible, at least for Nika. And Akira is only 1, so we're in the middle of testing him out. Okay? So they are a quarter Taiwanese and 3/4 Japanese. And so we currently live in Canada, in this area, just outside of Montreal, about an hour outside. But it wasn't always like this. The kids were born in Japan, well, the first 2. And we actually made a big move, strategic move, I would say, in 2015. And I moved the whole family from, I say Asia because we were in Japan and Taiwan. And we moved over all the way across to this little town outside of Montreal. And there's several reasons for that. Linguistics, well, languages. It's an area in Quebec where we speak French, or Québécois. And of course, English is very prominent. We also wanted a North American style education for our children. The Asian style, I didn't think fitted our way of life. Space, lower population density, less traffic. I mean, I didn't want to worry about my kids getting hit by a car, just, going outside. So, I mean, here they could play, without me having to keep my eye on them all the time, the nature and all. And importantly, not language related, but in terms of sports and other types of infrastructure, within a 15-minute drive, we have a ski hill, we have ice arena, golf courses, parks, cycling, skating trails. We even have a water park just at the foot of the hill here. So this is a ski hill. That's actually 3 minutes by car. And this is a golf course. This is for me right now, but maybe in a year or 2, we can get Ronnie on the ski hills. I mean, the golf courses. There's soccer fields, tennis courts, gyms. I mean, you name it. This is a great place. It's paradise on earth for children. So my talk is, I call it a whole talent development package, but we are at the Polyglot Conference, so I'll mainly base it on the languages. So first, I'll just give you a little video of the other stuff. So the other talents that it's in the similar concepts that I use that I'll talk to later. But first, I'll show you a little bit of a summary of all the other things. And you can, as you listen to my talk, you can sort of think how you can extend it to other talents or skills.
你看，我们在这里，好啊。你看你自己站，来，等一下哦，芭比看了，你看，手放，呜呼，耶！来，好啊。今天第一次呢，你看，跟姐姐说，今天第一次。没事。
Thank you very much. So this is examples of possibilities that you can extend to throughout the concepts that I will talk about in the rest of the talk. So let's get into the language, and I'll start with my language journey. This is what I base all my activities on, how to reproduce how I was raised and improve upon that. So I was born in Hong Kong. My mother is Japanese, my father is Taiwanese. They met in Hong Kong, long story. But we moved back to Taiwan pretty much before I was 1. So I think I was 8 or 9 months. So I don't speak Cantonese, but I was in Taiwan. I went to an American school, and I had a Taiwanese nanny, and I spent weekends at my grandparents. So this is relevant as these activities exposed me to Mandarin, Japanese, Taiwanese, Hakka, and English. I usually have to explain Taiwanese and Hakka, but to this crowd, I think you all know these are languages in Taiwan. So by the time I was 6 years old, I was exposed to these 5 languages. I would use them on a daily or periodical basis. Then I moved to Quebec after elementary school. I was 13, and I went to live with my aunt, who married a Quebecer. And through university courses, trips to South America and Europe, I picked up French, Spanish, German, Italian, and Portuguese. So these are languages that I attempted to learn either by myself or formally at school. And so that's another 5 more languages that I've been exposed to by the time I was age 20. So after long years of schooling, I did a PhD that has nothing to do with languages. I did it in cellular and molecular biology. I went to do a postdoc, as if a PhD is not enough. I went to go through more pain for another few years in Japan. But part of me was thinking I wanted to strengthen my Japanese and my Mandarin by going back to Asia. And that was a 2 to 3 year plan, which turned out to be 12 years. And I came back to Quebec, as I mentioned, in 2015 with 2 children. The last one was born last year in Canada. And so I came back in 2015, and incidentally, I went to the New York Polyglot Conference, which really blew me away, and I decided, well, I'd do a little thing of my own in Canada, and I started the Langfest, which the first one was last year in 2016. Today, I consider myself fluent in these 5 languages: English, French, Japanese, Mandarin, and Spanish, in that order of fluency. And these are the 5 languages that I use to teach my children. So what did I do with my children? So as an example, as a template, I guess, I will talk about my son. So Ronnie was born in Nagasaki in 2012. So he is 5 in 3 months. And before he was even born, I decided I would be responsible for Mandarin. And I would talk to my wife's tummy in Mandarin. And living in Japan at the time, obviously the exposure to Japanese through my wife and through everybody else. So he was exposed to these 2 languages upon birth. My wife was studying at that time, so she was tied down to Nagasaki. But we had the plan to go back to Canada already around 2015. So I decided that while we were waiting, I'm going to go to Taiwan with Ronnie and expose him to more Mandarin so we can strengthen that part. So he was 19 months when we moved to Taiwan, and we still have family there, so we strengthened his Mandarin. And at the same time, we decided to put him into a daycare in Taipei, in Tianmu. If you know, that's the area where lots of foreigners are, and you can find American daycares. So English was introduced when he was 19 months, and that's pretty much when the kids start to blabber and talk about things. Start to talk. So it was almost a simultaneous introduction, I would say, for the 3 languages when he was 19 months, before he was 2. And in July 2015, so he was 3 years old exactly, we moved back to Quebec. We put him in a French-speaking daycare. And I also wanted to introduce Spanish, a language that I consider very important if we live in North America or anywhere else in the world, I guess. So we didn't have anybody speaking Spanish specifically. I mean, other than myself, I wanted to do something different where I handle just Mandarin, and I'll go into that a little more later. But we invited an au pair from Mexico. So there's the introduction of French and Spanish when he was 36 months old. And if there's one common aspect between myself and Ronnie, and I don't know how to take off that bar, but basically the key element binding us to is that we started early in our language education. So first, before anything, I'd like to go into a little bit of what we think are the importance of starting early in multilingual, and also for other types of skills. I think starting early cannot, only has benefits. And I'll reduce it to these 4, which I think are critical in our ways of thinking. And the first one is to be able to learn multiple language really to a very high level, if not native-like. And the second is about a window of time that children have before they develop self-awareness, self-consciousness, pride, so the psychological barriers that start to develop as we get older. So we have this small window of time that we want to capitalize on. Third, these are research that talks about brain benefits of speaking multiple languages and even starting early. And the fourth is economical, financial, however you want to say it, opportunity cost is one way I would say it in economical terms. And these, I guess, criteria, you can also extend them to, you can think about the parallels with languages, sports, and probably other endeavors. So first, about the native-like level of language acquisition. This is a graph that I took from a very popular TED Talk called The Linguistic Genius of Babies by Dr. Patricia Kuhl. She's from Washington State University, if I'm not mistaken. So she talks about, this is the critical period hypothesis. And basically it says that children have a window of time before they're age 7 where they can really acquire languages to a very, very high or native-like level. And it systematically declines very quickly within years. So by the time you're in your teens, late teens, even 20s, it drops to very low levels. But I want to note this is an observation of what is going on. It's not necessarily a mechanistical explanation. If you talk to folks like Tim Keeley, he knows there are various methods or ways of thinking about accents and learning languages to a high level. So, of course, there are exceptions to the rule, but this is a general observation that we see with children. And the last time I showed this slide to Steve Kaufman, he said, well, what about people in the 70s? What can we do about that? And I didn't have an answer. All I can say is I focus on the first few years, and that's where I strike and really try to take it home. So Patricia Kuhl talks about how little kids, they listen, and she uses the analogy of little scientists. They are taking statistics on the sounds that they hear, so if you speak a certain language, you'll have certain distinctive sounds in that language, and they'll gather that more than other languages that they don't hear often in other languages. So here's the example of a contrast between English, a native English speaker, and a native Japanese speaker. If you have folks speaking to you in English all the time, there are distinctive sounds that you catch in English, that you use in English, like the English R and the L, which are very distinct sounding sounds. But the Japanese, we have the larirurero, which is a pretty intermediate sound between the R and the L. And so your ears get used to one, or the bimodal sound or the single sound here in the middle. And you sort of get used to that, and you're able to decipher that much easier. Of course, the flip side is if you're used to one, then you have a harder time with the other sound. So this kind of explains why Japanese speakers have a tough time distinguishing between the R and the L, and they write congratulations with the R in the second place, or the L in the first place. And it's really a hearing thing, apparently. So I don't know all the science behind this, but I thought this was very interesting. And this is another thing that, that I saw, is that apparently all languages cover a certain zone on the auditory spectrum, and the human ears can hear anywhere between the low hundreds to about 20,000 hertz. Anywhere outside that range, you'd have to be a bat or something to really hear it. So an example here is that Japanese would be in the lower range, and this is a logarithmic scale, so you need to see that this covers really the low range up to like about, what, 1,300 or 1,500. If you speak British English, then you'd be at a higher range. So your ears get used to sounds produced in that range. Obviously, this is not the only explanation for everything, but this can contribute to your ears getting used to certain ranges, and I guess more open to sounds in that range. So then the theory would be that if you know fewer languages, more languages when you're young, your ears can remain open to a wider range of sounds and be more receptive to that. So naturally, we would think that if you hear better, you would understand better. Whoops, sorry about that. You would understand better. If you understand better, you learn and retain better. If you learn and retain better, well, you speak better. It's kind of like the input hypothesis of Dr. Krashen, I guess. Similar, possibly. I think if you hear better, you can also produce or reproduce the sounds better, and that would lead to good accents. Now, the advantages, disadvantages, importance of accents is a completely different talk. You can go on forever on that. But I think, personally, if you have a good accent, it builds confidence, so you could probably be more receptive to learning better languages. Social integration probably helps a lot if you have better accents. There's also studies that say trustworthiness is enhanced if you have better accents. I mean, all other things considered equal, obviously. So the importance of accents, we can debate on that forever. The way I put it, I think good accents is like it's like good looks, right? It's not the most important thing. You need good grammar, good vocabulary, but you'd like to have it, right? I mean, can't help. So it's better to have good accents, better to have good looks, I think. So to finish this section on accents, so the theory is that they hear better. They have better ears, and at the same time, I don't know if you've ever been criticized by a kid on accents, but they are pretty demanding, pretty strict. And here's an example of Ronnie being quite demanding on other people in a few languages.
4、
五、六、
6、
七、
7、
八、
8、
九、
9、
十。
10。Okay.
Little teacher.
Okay.
这个嘞，这个也是不一样啊。
P-E-R-T Y Percy
Oh, very good! 哇！
Percy
Percy， 我以为你会说 Percy。Percy，
不是 Percy 是 Percy
Very good, Percy。
不是 Percy
不是 Percy。
Launcher.
那怎么讲？
Launcher.
龙
long
讲
sharp
讲
sharp
讲
shark
讲，不是。
on
deux,
trois
quatre,
quatre
cinq,
quatre está bien quatre
six,
quatre
cinq,
cinq
six,
six
sept.
sept. Oh, gracias, Ronnie.
Okay, so, well, they probably hear it well, and hence, if they notice, they say what they say. That's children are like that. So I'm going to go into the second point of the importance of starting early, and I was talking about this window of time. So self-awareness, self-consciousness, pride, all these things that I think that I have as a mental block when I talk in a language that I'm not so confident in. They probably don't have it. They don't have any concept of shame and timidness. So children are pretty much fearless, I guess. They don't care. They just go out and make mistakes. We all say that. Oh, you gotta go out and talk and make the mistakes and learn. But how many of us really can do it open-heartedly, other than Benny? So it's very hard for me personally. So Benny's a hero. And I think this can definitely be extended to sports and other endeavors. I mean, I look at Ronnie go down the hill on a snowboard. I mean, I would not do some of the stuff that he does. So, I mean, I don't want to break a bone. I mean, kids are like elastic. They fall down the hill and just stand up and go again. So I can't do that. They jump into a circle, making friends instantaneously. Joining into team sports, and all that. Going into social circles. It's important, right? So this area where they just go in and then they succeed. They can build on that, and they just go right on. So the third point is about the brain benefits. There's a lot of studies about this. So learning one language or multiple language, the biological effects on the brain, the resistance to mental decline, learning in general, you can multitask if you learn more languages. Communication skills are enhanced. There's a gazillion of these evidence out there, and I don't see any which go the other way, where being multilingual is detrimental to the children. So I just go about it, and I think it's very important. And apparently, gray matter density is increased, and well, that's a bonus. And finally, I definitely won't dwell on this, but I think it's easy to think that children, they don't have money, but they have a lot of time. They are curious and they do all sorts of things, but they have the time to do it. And when you grow up, you have school, you have homeworks, you have work, you have family, relationships. Life gets busy, and learning languages on top of that is a burden for many of us. So why not invest as much as possible while they have that time? Their hourly rates are not very expensive. So that's when I think the opportunity costs are much lower. So just go right on ahead. So these are the 4 major points that I think, the importance of starting early. But still, there's a lot of, I hear comments about people saying that you have to learn one language at a time. They're going to get burdened, they're going to get confused. And I think some of it comes from this example where children would mix up the languages. But let me first show you the example. So the scenario is 2.5-year-old Ronnie is singing a song in English, and then he does this. Oh, hang on.
Para saberlo.
Hello, Pala.
So anybody can tell me what happened there? Yes. So the specific term is called code switching. I think Shireen talked about switching. I think this is part of it. This is where the children uses more than one language in one sentence or in one conversation, I guess. So in a 4-word sentence, he used English, I want, para, which is Chinese, for guava, and taberu, which is Japanese for to eat. Nothing wrong for him, just I want para taberu. These are words that he knew at the time. He has no concept of what language meant. So he just uses what he can and to try to convey whatever he wanted to convey. This thing just, it fades out very quickly, I think within a year, few months. I know I did it when I was a kid. He does it, and it's gone. Today, he has channeled his 5 languages very well. He would talk without mixing the languages, unless intentionally he doesn't know a certain word for a given thing. He would borrow from another language. I don't know if technically that is called code switching. I don't know if code switching means it has to be intentional or non-intentional, but I'll differentiate that. At this time, it was non-intentional. Today, if he does it, it would be intentional. I mean, I do it all the time when I speak to my friends in Quebecer. So now I'll get into how a little bit of nitty-gritty of what we do in our daily lives, but very simply, the strategies are, one is, we moved to Canada, so there's a lot of, good infrastructure for talents and whatnot, and there's the languages in there. And I also introduced the idea of introducing foreign language through au pairs. This can be au pairs, can be exchange students, somebody who's there in your house and who speaks the target language with the kids. And I also wrote about something called CLAP, that I just came up with that. I call it the Contextual Language Acquisition Philosophy. But I didn't come up with the concept. I didn't know about other people writing about this, but it's basically what many polyglots talk about. It's just to build language learning opportunities into your life context. Or sometimes you do it the other way. You create the life context that allows you to use different languages, like bringing in an au pair. And the ultimate goal for all this is to make it easy, make it accessible. So create an environment that allows you to use the different languages, or for other skills is to develop some skills through habits that are easy to use due to infrastructure, for example. If you can access something very easily, you're more likely to do it. We go to the ski hill 3-4 times a week because it's right there. We can just look at the weather and go, let's go for a few runs. Whereas if we were still in Japan, we'd have to plan that weeks in advance. You have to take a night bus from Shinjuku, and it takes you like 4 hours at night. You arrive there, you want to ski even if it's -16 because you paid for it, it's like $300. See, so it's to work on the environment so that it's easier for you. It's less resistance for you to do the things that you want to do, to teach them the things that you want to teach them. So back to languages, our multilingual environment is this. So I am responsible for Mandarin along with my father. My wife and my mother here are Japanese, so they do the Japanese. Friends of Ronnie, they do the French. We have an au pair in Spanish, and occasionally we would bring in also an au pair for English. She's not full-time, but we would always want the Spanish au pair to be there. And outside of home, obviously there's the school, there's the teams, there's family, friends in Taiwan, Japan, etc. So I'm going to come down here, give you one example. It's an extreme example where Ronnie he got a chance to use all 5 of his languages in 1 minute. I mean, he switches around all the time, but I thought this was good. I was able to catch a video of him doing all 5 in a very short time frame.
Ronnie made a car. We made a car.
Ronnie?
Ronnie, ¿me pasas la matraca? Sí. ¿No tienes la verde? Ay, se me fue. Pásala de nuevo. ¿Tienes la verde?
La verde.
Ajá, ¿dónde está la verde? La matraca verde.
No, es azul.
Pero había una verde.
No es una verde, es una azul. Quiero.
Have you made the track here, Ren? Is it done?
Es
Wow.
azul en mí.
Excellent, you made it by yourself?
Ya.
Wow.
真的吗？你这个叫什么？你刚刚是在玩什么？
Trains.
哎，
So, very naturally, unlike the welcome video, this is not staged, of course, and he's switching around in his languages naturally. So that's the important point. No hesitation. He's not translating in his head. So this is exactly what we're aiming for, and we're glad to see this. And obviously he's 5. He talks about things that a 5-year-old talks about. So you can't talk to him about the politics or astrophysics, but this is precisely what we were going for. So I'll go into a little bit of how the family part is easy. Now we employ au pairs. Most of you are from Europe. I guess you're very familiar with the concept of using au pairs. Usually a young female who comes to live with you through an extended period of time. They usually take care of the children. They can help a little bit on some house tasks. And they are there to experience new culture, new experience in the country where they're going. And with this strategy, we thought it was a tremendous investment, and it paid off very quickly. As I show you here in a little example, Angelica, she's Mexican. She came to our home on August 7th. I remember this to the day because exactly 1 week after, this is what we saw.
Uno, dos, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh my God!
So 1 week, that's what we saw. 2 months, this is what we saw. So they're playing, Angelica's playing with the kids. I am holding the phone. My wife was in Japan at that time, so she's on the call through Skype. And this is what we saw. In the middle of the video, Nika will hit her head on the table, but don't get distracted, okay? That's not the main. Just listen to what Ronnie's saying and how he switches around, okay?
¿Cuenta hasta 5?
No,
Yo.
no, sí.
Yo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
じゃあグレーのやつ入ってる。
Aquí. 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 ¿Dónde estás? ¿Dónde estás? Aquí.
¿Dónde?
Abajo de la mesa.
¿Abajo de la mesa?
Aquí. Abajo de la mesa.
¡Wow! ¡Te encontré! Espera, Nika se golpeó.
行かないね。
¿Qué pasó? Estás abriendo herida.
Mami, Angelica가 롱장가 사갔어요.
你跑到哪里去？
Te encontré.
我跑到这边来吃。
真的吗？
是。
哇，你那么厉害啊！
Angelica, 知道吗？
So again, you notice how he switches around very, very fluidly, very quickly. 2 months. This is very encouraging information for us, and so it allows us to really move forward and continue with the strategy. And we're now at our 4th au pair in our 3rd year. So just very quickly, I'm running out of time here. Benefits, so considerations for employing au pairs. They are coming here for a reason. They want to learn new culture, new food, broaden their horizons, live in a different circumstance. So we offer that, and also the ski hill and all the infrastructure that we can provide them during the day. The kids are at the daycare, so they can go out and be free and do what they want. What we're looking for is continuous exposure to a native accent. And this is not just good for the children, it's also good for my wife, for example. Her Spanish is getting pretty good now. Okay? And they also teach some values and other skills than languages. For example, Caroline, our previous au pair, she played piano, so she taught them some music. And loving relationship, I want to take 1 minute for that. Apparently, experts say that language learning is greatly enhanced if you have a trusting and loving and caring relationship for children. So having someone be their friend, their big sister in the house provides that connection, and we see they learn very quickly. I think it's due to that. And obviously, they help a little around the house, which is great. And we also get to learn their culture. And things we are now seeing and we want to be careful about is cultural differences between them and us. Also, if we have two au pairs at the same time between the two au pairs. And this is coming up more and more now, the psychological effects of frequent goodbyes with the au pairs for our children. And we can see here, this is a scenario where the au pair is going away for 1 night. She's going to her apartment and coming back the next morning, and look at how sad Nika gets.
¿Sí le vas a hacer?
Ratito dormí,
dormí.
punta de día, ¿ok?
Sí, está bien. Y mañana nos vemos.
Ok.
Está bien. Gracias. Mañana, temprano.
Ok, mañana.
Descansa. Buenas noches.
너 따뜻하네?
Hasta mañana. Se cuidan.
Anda mañana.
Mañana nos vemos.
Ok.
Pero te tienes que dormir un ratito.
Tatunta día. Tatunta día, ok, Andra.
Sin pesadillas.
Ok, sí.
Descansa. Buenas noches. Hasta mañana.
Ok.
Mañana temprano.
So that's a separation for 1 night. And it was hard when Andrea actually did leave a while ago. So very quickly, I'm going to just end soon. I was talking about CLAP, basically using your environment, integrate language learning elements. So we use the DVD in both my cars. We put them in American daycare when we were in Taiwan, the cousin, family in Japan, outside of school, his friends. When I read to them, it'll be Mandarin. With my wife, it'll be Japanese, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's countless examples that you can come up with for this. And I'll skip over that. That's just basically him doing something he loves, and more examples in family. So, importance, again, is to create the environment so that you can have, let them develop desirable habits and learn various talents, including, of course, languages efficiently and effectively. And learning all these things to a very high level, and I put, age standardized, 4 or 5 year old, he's pretty good for his languages, for his skiing and whatnot. And I think that builds confidence. You succeed in something, you want to do it more. That leads to motivation. And also, if you have common interests with other people, you can make friends easier. You can have things to talk about. So that's it. That's my talk. It's really about creating the environment and going about it. So I would field some questions. I'm sorry I don't have too much time. If you want more reading, I have a few books. And again, I do the language festival. So, all right.
Time for a question or two.
thanks for the talk. That was very, very interesting. And I was struck by one thing you said about education. You said you wanted a North American education for your children.
Yes.
And I'm particularly, because of my family circumstances, I'm particularly interested to know what specific features of the Japanese education system you felt were not compatible with your family's culture.
Well, the Japanese system is a very society-based. It's very organization-based. It stresses uniformity, and I mean there are advantages to that, disadvantages to that. I prefer a system where they are not so much penalized when they say things that are unconventional. So it's a system, I guess, in North America where they get to express themselves more freely. Not that you can't do that in Japan, but it's just that they even have things like hijoshiki, which means unconventional, which has a negative meaning in Japan, where I think, if we're in North America or in the Western society, it could lead to originality. So it's a difference that we're not, that we thought would be better in our family.
Hello. Thanks for your talk. I'd like to ask, do your children ever refuse to go along with your plans? And what do you do in that situation?
That's a very good question. I think the point is, do they know the plan? That's the window of time. They don't know that other people don't speak 5 languages. They're probably starting to question a little bit now. But it's too late. They already know the few languages that they do. Their mind is already channeled. The habit, now I talk about this, I want to stress this, the habit of talking to me in Mandarin, the habit of talking to mom in Japanese, it's made. Now it's weird for them to try to switch around. Because the next question you're going to have is, but they see you speak Japanese with mom or Spanish with the au pair. But that's not important. They already created a habit with me to speak with me in Mandarin. You all have this experience, right? You talk to somebody, for whatever reason you started off on the second language, but you continue in that language because it's weird now to come back to the first language. Ever had that? So this is what we're creating. We're driving that home. So I never switch around in my languages. And there's different thoughts on that. I mean, I could teach them Spanish, probably, but I don't. And precisely because I fear that one day they're just going to say, why am I doing Spanish? I'm just going to do English because it's the easiest language.
So I'm going to change my question because it was about how about your children when they see you?
Yeah.
So my question now becomes how raising your children like this affects your own language skills and the way you practice the languages that you know.
Okay. I think many immigrant families, when they go to the States or elsewhere, they sort of go out of their way and start to use the local language on their children. I find that very sad. Of course, I don't do it to practice my Mandarin with them. Okay, there's just nobody else really to do that. And my language skills, at least for the first 5, I think are sufficiently high for me to teach them. And but it's true that there are folks who sort of do that use their children as the practice pad for their own language. But some do that. Others they think that it's too much burden for the child to do the minority language, so they would have to switch to the local language in order for them to not be confused. Now, that I think it's unfortunate because you're going out of your way to do an effort to sort of like take away something from them. That's sort of how I see it. So, anyways, to answer your question, in my case, I'm not practicing my Mandarin on them. It's really not the point.
First question is, what language do you speak when you're the 5 of you speaking together? Is that Japanese?
Usually, well, yeah, with the 5 would be myself, my wife, and the 3 kids. It would be Japanese. I would be doing the real talking with the wife. But if I address my son, I would switch to Mandarin.
Yeah. Just basing it off my own experience, how would you cope with the potential scenario in the future where they get so used to speaking Japanese together and they stop answering you in Mandarin? Because they know that you can speak Japanese?
Well, so this is what I was mentioning earlier. It would probably feel weird for them to not speak Mandarin with me. I hope that continues, this weirdness, so that they don't switch the languages on me. But I do expect that it could come up one day. And if that does, it won't be today. It'll probably be a little later, maybe 10, 12. And again, I'll say, I think it'll be too late. It's already, well ingrained. And I mentioned earlier, the hearing part, I think, is what's important for me. It's not the vocabulary. It's not speaking correctly. It's the hearing. If they can hear well and their ears are fixed and receptive to all sounds later in life, I think they will be able to learn languages, other languages, or strengthen their own the current languages and the theory, the grammar, and all that later in life. That's fine. Thank you.